Hey,
Turn out off our videos now. Yeah.
fellow members of the Philippine business community, our friends in media, friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining today's convocation for shared prosperity and the signing ceremony and launching of the historic Philippine Business Community's Covenant for Shared Prosperity. Historic because the covenant formalizes the Philippine business community's response to the global disease of inequity and lack of inclusiveness, which was further aggravated by the pandemic that has affected millions of people around the world. In our country, hundreds of thousands had already been affected by the pandemic and thousands have died because of COVID-19. And just as bad, if not worse, thousands of businesses, particularly MSMEs, have closed down. Millions have lost their jobs and our economy received a terrible beating. We read reports that 40% of families are going hungry. The poverty line has gone up, back up to the high 20s and may have already breached 30%. We see homeless people and beggars now even in certain streets of Makati, our premier city. We are sitting on a social volcano waiting to erupt. We realize that the government is trying to do its best under this difficult situation, although many of us also believe that government can still do better. But the question is, what about the private sector? How do we respond to the challenges brought about by global inequity and now the pandemic? That is the reason for our convocation today. My name is Rex DRILON, a member of the MAP, Sharefield, ICD, and ISA, 4 of the 26 business and professional associations who are signing the covenant today. We have a full-packed program, and depending on the Q&A, where we have allotted 40 minutes, we might overshoot slightly the 12 noon deadline. We apologize in advance. Please settle down comfortably and we'll now begin our convocation. May I request everyone to pause, bow our heads for a short prayer. We are in the presence of the Lord. In the name of the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our most merciful God, we come to you in our weakness. We come to you in our fear. We come to you with trust, for you alone are our hope. We place before you the disease present in our world. We turn to you in time of our need. Bring wisdom to doctors, give understanding to scientists, endow frontliners and caregivers with compassion and generosity. Bring healing to those who are ill. Protect those who are most at risk. Give comfort to those who have lost a loved one, and welcome those who have died into your eternal home. Stabilize our communities, Lord. Unite us in our compassion. Remove all fears from our hearts and fill us with confidence in your care. Help the thousands of MSMEs who have lost their businesses. Help the 40% of our 15 million families who are suffering from hunger. And help the millions who have lost their jobs. And help those who have fallen into poverty. These who ask in the holy name of Jesus. Amen. In the name of the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Let us now stand and place our right hands over our hearts and join in the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, helas ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa dikit mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyak ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisikin, sa nagagang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mo bangaw, ay hinatang tulad, awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang isang ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagkikinig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan, ang ay di magkikinig, lumalang
Please be seated. May I now request the President of the Management Association of the Philippines, Attorney Francis Ed Lim, who is the Senior Partner and EXCO member of AQUINO, to deliver the welcome remarks. Francis?
Thank you very much, Rex. Our distinguished speakers, friends from the government, the diplomatic community, civil society, and the media, officers and members of the 25 participating business groups, fellow directors and members in MAP, friends and colleagues, good morning to all of you. On behalf of the Board of Governors of the Management Association of the Philippines, I welcome you all to this convocation and the launching of the Philippine Business Group's Covenant for Shared Prosperity. But before I go further, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our keynote speakers who accepted our invitation to be part of today's ceremonies amidst their busy schedule. On behalf of MAP and the other business groups, thank you very much, Chair EMILIO of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Mr. Hansi of the SM Group, and Mr. Jaime Augusto ZOBEL de Ayala of Ayala Corporation for gracing this momentous occasion. As we struggle with the COVID pandemic, we also need to address the critical longer-term global issue of inequality, which, as Rex said, has worsened because of the current health crisis. Many businesses have closed, millions have lost their jobs, and many of our brothers and sisters are going hungry. When the crisis is over, we at MAP would want a new normal in the way we deal with our stakeholders, our employees, customers, product, service, and fund providers, the communities which we serve, the environment, and our shareholders, both majority and minority shareholders. The Covenant is actually an implementation of the Stakeholder Theory that is now part of the Corporation Code. As some of us may know, our Corporation Code has been revised in 2019 and it now states part of law that the rights of stakeholders established by law, by contractual relations, and through voluntary commitments must be respected. Today's convocation is just one way on how each of the participating organizations can help by committing to promote inclusive development for the benefit of our 6 groups of stakeholders. But today's launching ceremony is just the beginning. A bigger challenge lies ahead of us, and that is how to operationalize these commitments in order to achieve the objectives of the Covenant, which is to promote equality or at least minimize inequality among our stakeholders. Today's convocation would be interesting as we're about to hear from our speakers what the respective businesses are doing to promote shared prosperity for all of us. We are fortunate to be able to listen to them, and hopefully we will hear answers to our questions like, is the stakeholder theory or sharing your prosperity just a matter of corporate social responsibility, or is there a business case to it? How has our Securities and Exchange Commission implemented the stakeholder theory under the revised Corporation Code? What is the Ayala Group doing in terms of its commitment to the community and product and service providers? What projects have the SM Group adopted to pursue its commitment to the environment? For us audience, what key takeaways can we bring home from the presentations of our speakers, and what can we adopt as part of our business model? Special thanks to the following organizations: for joining the Management Association of the Philippines in its commitment to promote shared prosperity and joining today's convocation. May take some of your time to mention them. ALYANSA, AGRIKULTURA, American Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, Bankers Association of the Philippines, CEBU Business Club, CEBU Leads Foundation, European Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, Federation of Philippine Industries, Filipina CEO Circle, FinTech Alliance, Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines, Institute for Solidarity in Asia, Institute of Corporate Directors, Integrity Initiative, Inc., Investment House Association of the Philippines, IT and Business Process Association of the Philippines, Judicial Reform Initiative, Makati Business Club, People Management Association of the Philippines, Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Philippine Institute of Certified Public Accountants, Philippine Women's Economic Network, UP School of Economics Alumni Association, Semiconductor and Electronics Industries of the Philippines, Inc., the Shareholders Association of the Philippines, and last but not least, Women's Business Council of the Philippines. Thank you very much for committing to promote the covenant for shared prosperity among your members. Let me also thank the MAP Shared Prosperity Committee Chair, Popoy Del Rosario, Committee Vice Chair Alex Cabrera, Committee Members Rex Rilon and Ben Tihanki, Committee Governor in Charge Amando Saite Tanco, and MAP National Issues Committee Chair Risa Mandarin for putting together this covenant and this convocation. As of this time, as I understand from Arnold, there are 250 registrants for this convocation, and many more have joined us through Facebook. In closing, thank you one and all for attending this convocation. Keep well, everyone. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat.
Thank you, MAP President Francis Lim. At this point, we'll now acknowledge the heads or representatives of the Philippine business groups enumerated by Francis, who have signed the Covenant for Shared Prosperity. To those representatives, please sign the covenant now if you haven't done it yet. And may I request each of the signatories to now turn on their videos. The heads or representatives of the Philippine business groups who have signed the covenant are as follows, again, with your indulgence. ALYANSA AGRIKULTURA, represented by Dr. Ernesto Ordonez, Chairman. AMCHAM, represented by Mr. Roberto Batumbacal, Vice President. Bankers Association of the Philippines, represented by the President, Cesar Consing. CEBU Business Club and CEBU Leads Foundation, represented by Don D. Joseph, President. European Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, represented by Florian Gottlein, Executive Director. Federation of Philippine Industries, represented by Bert Lina, President. Filipinos CEO Circle, represented by its President Sharon Dayowan. Phoenix, represented by Michael Guarin, EVP. FinTech Alliance, represented by their Chairman Lito Villanueva. ISA, or Institute for Solidarity in Asia, represented by Popoy Del Rosario. Institute of Corporate Directors, ICD. I represent ICD as Chairman. Chairman of the Integrity Initiative, Alex Cabrera. IHAP President, Robert Charles Lehman. IT BPAP President, Ray Untal. Judicial Reform Initiative Chair, Baby Nuesa. Makati Business Club, represented by its Chair, Ed Chua. MAP, represented by Attorney Francis Lim, President. PMAP, represented by Luisa Mila Echevarria, President. PCCI, represented by George Barcelon, President Emeritus. PICPA, represented by Mr. Lope Bato Jr., the National President. Philippine Women's Economic Network, PhilWen, represented by Boots Garcia, the chair. SEPI, or Semiconductors Electronics Industries in the Philippines, represented by the president, Danny La Chica. Shareholders Association of the Philippines, represented by Jimmy Ismael, the president. UP School of Economics Alumni Association, Mr. Jeffrey Nang, its president, and Women's Business Council Philippines, represented by this president, Monette Hamlin. May I also now ask the signatories to hold their signed covenant for shared prosperity so we can have a screenshot of all the signatories. Kindly hold the pre-signed covenant beside your face. Please make sure that your face and the covenant will be properly shown on the video so we can get a screenshot of all of you. Thank you. Arnold, you can tell us when we can put down our covenant. Are you done, Arnold? Okay, I think I heard the click.
Okay,
Thank you
we're
very
done.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, while there are 26 organizations represented in today's convocations, there are hundreds more out there who are individual members or representing companies that are also members of these signatories. Can I make a brief background of the covenant? And this is for the benefit of those who are not familiar with the project. Even before the pandemic, many among us in the business and civil society have been struggling with how the country in general and Philippine business and civil society in particular should respond to the problem of inequality and inclusivity. And as if this was not enough, the COVID-19 pandemic hit us and has shaken the very foundations of the global society and economy, with our country being one of the worst hit. I have earlier enumerated the growing cost of COVID-19 to our economy and society. We wholeheartedly support the vision of the government articulated in the Ambition Natin 2040, which states that, and I quote, "The Philippines shall be a country where all citizens are free from hunger and poverty, of equal opportunities, enabled by fair and just society, that is governed with order and unity, a nation where families live together, thriving in vibrant, culturally diverse and resilient communities." End quote. We have only 20 years to make this happen. The group realizes that our country, like many other countries around the world, is suffering from gross inequality, not only in economic and financial terms, but also in the social, environmental, and political aspects of our national life. This gross inequality in our society has been with us for generations, fueled by greed, illegal and unethical practices, corruption, callousness to the needs of communities, especially those at the bottom of the pyramid, and indifference to Mother Earth by some among us, not all of us. We seek to end these practices. We therefore, the covenant therefore pledges and commit to recruit, train, and develop employees and managers to be the best that they can be, irrespective of gender, alma mater, age, ethnicity, and religion, provide just compensation and benefits, promote meritocracy, and encourage work-life harmony. For customers, to provide only quality products and services that are of continuing value to the customers. For the suppliers, we commit to treat our goods, service, and funds providers fairly, ethically, and with respect, as we expect them to treat their own in their supply chain the same way. For the communities, we commit to be actively involved in the communities where we operate, with particular attention to the needs of the disadvantaged in those communities. For the environment, we commit to preserve and protect the environment for the benefit of current and future generations by employing environment-friendly technologies in all aspects of business operations. And last but not the least, our commitment to deliver reasonable and just returns to, and fair treatment of our controlling and non-controlling stockholders. And so today, 26 business associations representing hundreds of thousands of small, medium, and large enterprises have signed this covenant for prosperity. And many of you, signatories and other members of the audience, may be asking, after the convocation and the signing of the covenant, what's next? As President Francis asked the question, how do we operationalize this covenant that was just signed? We have 4 suggestions. 1, right after this convocation, we'd like its association, which joined us today, to sign the covenant, to turn to their member companies and individual members and ask them to also sign the covenant, as many of you did when the business community rolled out the Integrity Initiative 7 years ago. We suggest to use the remainder of the year to do this. Number 2, between tomorrow and March 2021, that's 5 months from now, we encourage all the associations and their member companies to issue 6 policy statements that embody the commitments of these member companies to the respective stakeholders, 6 stakeholders, to employees, to customers, to suppliers, to the community, for the environment, and the shareholders. By June 2021, 8 months from now, we hope that all the association and signatories and the member companies can develop metrics to measure how they are performing against their commitments to their 6 stakeholders. One suggestion is to study the adoption of the 21 metrics on shared prosperity as developed by the World Economic Forum with the help of PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, Ernst Young, and KPMG. Ben Tihanki of the LaSalle University and MAP has graciously offered to provide the link to the said WEF metrics. And by December 2021, number 4, or a little over a year from today, we hope to receive a report from each signatory on how each of you have performed using the locally adopted and adjusted metrics on shared prosperity. And before now we start the presentation of the keynote speakers, just a few rules. As participants for this convocation, we'd like to inform you that you are automatically muted and your camera and video were already automatically turned off. For the Zoom participants, you may submit your questions through the Q&A button that you see on your screen. And for those on Facebook, please post your questions under the comment section. With the assistance of our MAP Secretariat, we will read the questions on your behalf. For your information, you will only be able to see the program participants, but you will not be able to view the other participants. And lastly, at any point during the convocation, in case you lose connection, please join again by repeating what you did earlier in logging in. We now go to our main program, which is the keynote speeches of 3 invited guests. And in the interest of time and our tradition, we'll dispense with the lengthy introduction of our speakers. We can just show a one-pager profile for each of them. And I would like to personally make some comments on each of our guest speakers. May I now call on the first keynote speaker who will make a presentation on implementing the stakeholder principle or theory under the revised corporation code. If you all remember, several years ago, the SEC had declared that the purpose of the corporation is to promote and protect the interests of the stockholders and the other stakeholders. For some strange reasons, about 9 years ago, the SEC then removed the phrase "and the other stakeholders" from the purpose of the corporation. This dealt a major blow to the governance reform we were fighting for then. I remember the then president of the Philippine Stock Exchange, and now MAP President Francis Lim, and ICD founder Justice Stanislao fighting for putting back the phrase "and the other stakeholders" as part of the purpose of the corporation. It took 9 years and former SEC Chair Tess Bosa to put back the phrase. And just as well, because in August 2019, last year, the Business Roundtable, an organization of the top 181 corporations of America, made a declaration of the primacy of the stakeholders and not the stockholders as far as the purpose of their corporation is concerned. And our own SEC declared this to be true more than 5 years ago. America is 5 years late. Thank you, SEC. To talk more about this stakeholder theory, please welcome our very own chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Attorney EMILIO B. AQUINO. Mr. AQUINO.
To the Philippine business community, my co-keynote speakers, Mr. Hans T.C., Chairman of the Executive Committee, SM Prime Holdings Incorporated, and Mr. Jaime Augusto ZOBEL de Ayala II, Chairman and CEO of Ayala Corporation. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, a pleasant morning to you all. Today, I will discuss about the stakeholder theory and how the same is implemented through the revised corporation code as well as through pertinent SEC regulations on good corporate governance and our own commission's walk the talk, stakeholder-centric policies and programs. Coming off the release of the revised corporation code last February 2019, I know that many of you are wondering about the changes that the SEC enactment has brought upon the landscape of Philippine corporate governance. However, for this event, the focus will be on the RCC's adoption of the stakeholder theory for corporate governance. My introduction into good corporate governance dates back in 1999, when I made a research paper involving Asian economies which were hit by the Asian flu crisis while pursuing my doctoral studies in Davao. And then again, during my internship phase of the 2001 US SEC International Institute on Securities Market Development, I recall we had one of our sessions sponsored by Merrill Lynch in downtown Manhattan. We were then given brochures and a nicely curved wooden paperweight memento with Merrill Lynch famous logo, the bull poised to charge. And underneath it was the statement, "Good governance is good business." As I recall now, their kind of corporate governance was geared towards maximization of shareholders' value as reflected in their 2001 annual report, which prominently stated, delivering shareholder value. It reads, in addition to serving clients, Merrill Lynch is committed to delivering value to shareholders. We believe that achieving these results, combined with emphasis on improving the stability of risk-adjusted returns, should deliver significant shareholder value. For Merrill, it was all about maximizing shareholders' profits. And then came the global financial crisis in 2008. Gretchen Morgenson wrote in the New York Times how the thundering herd faltered and fell. She recounts, there were high fives all around Merrill Lynch headquarters in Lower Manhattan as 2006 drew to a close. The firm's performance was breathtaking. Revenue and earnings had soared and its shares were up 40% for the year. And Merrill's decision to invest heavily in the mortgage industry was paying off handsomely. But as we would know later, Merrill, the biggest U.S. brokerage firm with over 60,000 employees, ended up absorbed by Bank of America in a 2008 merger after Merrill took more than $45 billion in write-downs, twice the amount of profit it made in the 2.5 years before the credit crisis. Majority of Merrill Lynch employees, other than financial advisors, were laid off. So what then is the stakeholder theory, as contradistinguished to the shareholder model? In his paper, Stakeholder Theory, Corporate Responsibility, and the Ethics of Managerial Conduct, Professor Niceto S. Poblador presented an alternative interpretation of the profit maximization objective that takes a long-run strategic view. Here, addressing the concerns of all stakeholders in the firm is deemed to be good for the business, and stakeholder value is maximized by creating value for others. This interpretation of profit maximization goal is frequently referred to as the stakeholder theory of the firm. To better understand this concept, let's go back and look at the evolution of this theory from the point of view of corporate governance and the governing SEC regulations. Upon the enactment of the Securities Regulation Code, or SRC, in August 2000, the system of independent directors who would be elected into the boards of covered companies to represent public interests, exercising business judgment independent of directors who represented the controlling stockholders, was formally instituted. Despite this, and due to the minority representation of independent directors, the mechanisms in place under the SRC was not sufficient to say that stakeholder theory was institutionalized in the SRC. Admittedly, the focus of the SRC at the time of its enactment was to create shareholders' value in a more traditional sense. That is, by maximizing profit and attaining financial success for the corporation. As part of its efforts to increase the standards of corporate governance in the country, as a result of financial woes during the global financial crisis, the Commission issued in 2009 the Revised Code of Corporate Governance, or RCCG, but it took out the role of stakeholders provided in the original 2002 CG Code. It mandated the board to uphold honesty, integrity, transparency, and high standard of best practice in the conduct of their duties to the corporation and the stockholders, and ironically reverted to the shareholders model. Seeing the need to institutionalize the stakeholder theory, the SEC saw it fit to amend the 2009 RCCG in 2014 through SEC Memorandum Circular Number 9, Series of 2014. It revised the definition of corporate governance to the framework of rules, systems, and processes in the corporation that governs the performance of the board of directors and management of their respective duties and responsibilities to stockholders and other stakeholders, which include, among others, customers, employees, suppliers, financiers, government, and the community in which it operates. However, Dean Cesar Villanueva, in his Business World Commentary, expressed lament that when the stakeholders theory was reinstated in the Revised Code of Corporate Governance through SEC Memo Circular Number 9, Series of 2014, it provided for a watered-down version of the stakeholders identification clause, which read, identify the corporation's stakeholders community, in which the corporation operates or are directly affected by its operations, and formulate a clear policy of accurate, timely, and effective communication with them. Under the present revised Corporation Governance Code, it merely recognizes that stakeholders are entitled to only a clear, accurate, timely, and effective communication of matters of corporate affairs that affect them. Of course, my great explanation here is the full disclosure regime adopted by the SEC. Hence, regulations then are mostly on reporting and disclosures. As regards the promulgation of the 2016 CG Code for publicly listed companies, Dean Villanueva has this to ask. What is the corporate governance doctrine that prevails under the Code of Corporate Governance for publicly listed companies? And his brief answer is a hybrid system of corporate governance that has put together the best features of the doctrine's maximization of shareholders' value, stakeholders' theory, and the CSR doctrine. Almost simultaneously with the revised Corporation Code, I signed Memorandum Circular Number 4 on February 15, 2019, providing for the sustainability reporting guidelines for PLCs, which will apply to their 2019 annual reports to be submitted in 2020. To date, there are 237 submissions or a compliance rate of 88%. PLCs are now mandated to report their economic, social, and environment impacts, which further strengthen the stakeholder theory. At this point, we have seen a drastic paradigm shift in the way corporations do business and create shareholder value. Profit, which is essential in the survival of the corporation, is not anymore the sole focus of corporate ventures. For the issuance of this set of reporting guidelines, our SEC was recognized exactly a year ago at the UN Palace of Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, as among the top 5 recipients of the UNCTAD International Standards of Accounting and Reporting, or ISAR honors, out of 33 nominees coming from developed and emerging economies. It was notable that in this set of sustainability reporting guidelines, the word stakeholders, which of course includes shareholders, came out 78 times, but the term shareholders was never mentioned at all. On February 20, 2019, President Rodrigo Duterte signed into law the revised Corporation Code. For the first time after decades, the term corporate governance finally found its way into our corporate law. Our MAP President, Francis Lim, believes it may even be better to call it the Corporate Governance Code, given the numerous corporate governance principles incorporated therein. Thus, in at least 4 provisions of the RCC, the word corporate governance appeared. Section 23, election of directors or trustees. The directors or trustees elected shall perform their duties as prescribed by law, rules of corporate governance, and bylaws of the corporation. Section 26 on disqualification of directors, trustees, or officers. It says the foregoing is without prejudice to qualifications or other disqualifications which the Commission, the primary regulatory agency, imposed in the promotion of good corporate governance. Also in Section 49, regular and special meetings of stockholders or members. The minutes of the most recent regular meeting, which shall include, among others, other items that the Commission may require in the interest of good corporate governance. And finally, in Section 179 on powers, functions, and jurisdiction of the Commission, SEC shall have the power and authority to promote corporate governance through, among others, the issuance of rules and regulations consistent with international best practices. While there was no mention of the term stakeholders in the RCC, it did grant authority to the SEC to promote corporate governance consistent with international best practices. As I already presented, the stakeholders model of corporate governance has long found its way in and out of our CG regulations, and since it is part of global best practices, it is here to stay. As you will see later, your SEC stands committed to our stakeholder-centric policy, as reflected in our SEC Quality Policy Statement and in our Supervision 2025, the roadmap of my chairmanship. If we were able to put up regulations on corporate governance simply under our general rulemaking power, like requiring submission of the Code of Corporate Governance, how much more now with the RCC expressly empowering SEC to issue such rules and regulations to promote corporate governance, with that legal anchor as basis to issue guidelines similar to our UN-recognized sustainability reporting guidelines, or perhaps ESG kind of reporting standards. your SEC can come up with more bespoke and balanced corporate governance regulations embodying the stakeholder theory following global best practices in the near term. Of course, as we always did, we will hear your comments and suggestions, like those of ICD, SharePil, MAP, and other CG champions. In the meantime, the holding of the Convocation for Shared Prosperity today speak well where you stand in this shareholder versus stakeholder debate. And we at the SEC can only agree. After all, you are the corporate policy makers who make those kinds of decisions in your boardrooms. Your present action today approximates the research findings of the Diligent Institute and the Rock Center for Corporate Governance at Stanford University after they surveyed close to 200 global directors a year ago. It showed that 89% of corporate directors are not as shareholder-centric as commonly believed, and that companies do not put the needs of shareholders significantly above the needs of their employees or society at large. Instead, directors pay considerable attention to important stakeholders, particularly their workforce, and take the interests of these groups into account as part of their long-term business planning. And now, I'd like to show to you that your SEC is also committed to shared prosperity, and it is not all talk. We in the SEC walk the talk by implementing policies and programs that promote stakeholder value. On recruiting, training, and developing our employees and managers, we stated in our Supervision 2025 that by 2025, the SEC, with its driven, highly trained, and customer-centric team of professionals equipped with innovative technology and automated registration and data management systems, is the premier investor champion and catalyst of a broadened and informed investor-based capital market and business sector, considered among the best in the Southeast Asian region. We share the same resolve for our employees and managers. Thus, we adopted our Hire BNB program, which sounds like Airbnb. It stands for Hire Best and Brightest. We now have almost 80 board and bar placers, CESO top-notchers, Latin honor graduates, and other national achievers, roughly around 15% of our workforce. Of course, to support the hiring and retention of our valuable staff, we now have a provision in the RCC allowing SEC to grant compensation and benefits comparable to the private sector. We also send them for training, both here and abroad, except of course after the lockdown in March. Gender-wise, we have a 2:3 male-female ratio among our staff. For our department and extension office directors, it's an even 9:9 male to female director ratio. Age-wise, our commissioners have an average age of 47, which is fairly young by about 10 years compared to the previous sets of commissioners. During this pandemic, our workforce were provided with the necessary protections such as face masks, vitamins, alcohol, and face shields. We also provided shuttle services for our commuting employees in the light of possible COVID-19 infections in public transport. Moreover, our employees have updated and comprehensive health allowances to address their health and safety concerns. On providing only quality products and services, we adopted our SEC Quality Policy Statement, where we committed to serve our stakeholders with utmost integrity and professionalism, excel in performing our mandate through effective management for our people, and continually improve our quality management system in pursuing service, excellence, and commitment. On August 26, 2020, the Commission formally received the ISO 9001:2015 certification for its quality management system, covering all core services across all sites in its main office and extension offices. On treating our goods, service, and fund providers, we partnered with our regulatory organizations under our SEC campaign network. We likewise spent for the rapid testing, protective devices, and vitamins of our security personnel, utility, and other outsourced workers. On being actively involved in the communities where we operate in, SEC has sustained its annual blood donation program to the Philippine Children's Medical Center. We also send employee volunteers, these are our CPAs and lawyers, to mega swabbing centers to assist in the COVID-19 mass testing program of the government. We likewise supported the Philippine government in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic by contributing a total of 2 billion pesos. On protecting and preserving the environment, we adopted energy-saving protocols to minimize electricity and fuel consumption. Our proposed building is designed to meet green standards. It's called our project Green and Green. On delivering reasonable and just returns to and fair treatment of our controlling and non-controlling shareholders, we deliver prudent and excellent public service. We got excellent customer satisfaction rate from our customers in our main office and in the extension offices. We still get complaints though, due to limited personnel following social distancing requirements, but we do our best to address them. Our present SEC services mantra is easy at SEC, while our investor protection slogan is check with SEC. We also received good housekeeping marks, meaning unqualified opinion, from the Commission on Audit for the second consecutive year after getting qualified ones for a number of years. Last year, the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission conferred to us a plaque of honor for innovative and anti-corruption measures adopted in dispensing government services in ceremonies held in Malacanang Palace, graced no less by the President of the Republic. That, ladies and gentlemen, is our own story on how we take care of our stakeholders, how we walk the talk as the primary regulator advocating for the stakeholders model of corporate governance. Thank you for your kind attention and good morning.
Thank you, Chairman Emil, for your energetic, animated, and enlightening discourse on the stakeholder theory. And thank you for that amazing presentation. It's comforting to know that SEC is in very, very good hands.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Our next keynote speaker is a globally recognized leader and advocate for the environment. He will make a presentation on commitment to the environment. He's a pioneer in integrating environment initiatives in shopping malls. Our speaker has always believed that green makes good business sense. He has taken the lead for SM Prime Holdings Sustainable Development Plans and has been recognized by the United Nations for his leadership in resilience and the country's disaster risk reduction. He is the chairman of the executive committee of SM Prime Holdings. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, please welcome Mr. Hans T.C. Hans?
Thank you, Rex. Attorney EMILIO AQUINO, Chairman of SEC Security Exchange Commission. Well, it was a very good presentation. Congratulations. Mr. Jaime Augusto ZOBEL de Ayala, Chairman and CEO of Ayala Corporation. Attorney Francis Lim, President of Management Association of the Philippines, and to all the participating organizations and companies for this covenant. Good morning.
Morning.
First, allow me to thank the Management Association of the Philippines for inviting me to today's event. The invitation is very encouraging, especially as I have been asked to speak about commitment to the environment during this unique moment. Our company, SM Prime Holdings, owns and operates 74 shopping malls in the Philippines and 7 in China, combining to a total gross floor area of over 9.8 million square meters. Our other businesses include residential, commercial, and office buildings, as well as hotel, convention centers, and sports arena. We develop innovative and sustainable lifestyle cities, offering convenience and safety to our customers and the general public. I believe the best way to talk about my topic is to recount history and share my experiences. Since the early 1990s, SM has been promoting environment-friendly initiatives in our business operations. We implemented waste reduction through segregation and proper disposal among our tenants and on the whole in the communities we are located. Our pioneering solid waste management programs include the flagship Trash to Cash recycling market and the SM EcoBag project, which established the green mindset among our customers and tenants. This has expanded to partnering with material recycling facilities and along with emphasis also on preventing waste as much as possible, has already evolved to the restorative and regenerative course, which we all know as the circular economy. Technological advancement have been a lever to move us into even greener pasture. The economic benefits of our energy efficiency and water conservation projects have given back 1,000-fold, and I can attest to their sustainability as good business sense. On energy efficiency, our business establishments and properties run on building management system or BMS, which maximizes every kilowatt of energy. We are the first to replace all our chillers to environment-friendly models. About over 10 years ago, we have started conversion to LED lighting systems. We included skylight in our malls for natural lighting. Another first is our installation of solar panels in the roof decks of our malls. For water management, we encourage on the sustainable use of water. Water from our sewage treatment plants is treated and recycled into safe water for use of aircon cooling system, flushing of toilets, and landscape watering. On air efficiency, we pioneered the installation of light indicators in our parking areas. For the added convenience of our customers, and more significantly, to also help reduce carbon dioxide emission. In tandem with the LGU's effort to promote PMD or personal mobile devices, friendly lanes on the roads, we recently had all the malls put up bicycle racks front and back. This way, not only we're offering added convenience for our commuting public, we are also able to promote and encourage the use of bicycle for their environment and health benefits. Indeed, we trust we are clearly aligned with the government's policy on environment-friendly practices to advocate a greener Philippines. Being in business, we must carry the responsibility of safeguarding the surrounding environment. The earth we build on, the air we breathe, the energy and water we use, the very resources that keeps us alive compel us to do better for the community and retain the confidence of our stakeholders. Throughout the years, we have proven that our commitment to environment runs very deep and extends to a large investments on science and technology-based methods. This ensures our company is able to sustain its development with least harm to the resources meant for our future generation to enjoy. Every mall we have built takes into consideration the condition of the land. Infrastructure and technological innovation come to play when we encounter concerns such as flood-prone locations, the presence of fault lines, vulnerability to storm surges, and soil erosions. We have avoided destructions of our assets and the surroundings. Environment from natural hazard with risk assessments and science-based information and research that go into the mall design and construction. We allot 10% of capital expenditures as needed for disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation, as well as resource conservation in our new development. Some of this investment went into rainwater catchment basins, raising elevations, building on stilts, and also roof deck gardens. SM Prime also draws impetus to resilience and to stay on the green road for sustainable development by being an active member of ARISE, the Private Sector Alliance for Disaster Resilient Societies, which is an initiative led by the UNDRR, or the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. Supported by our commitment to the disaster risk reduction, we abide to the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals and work hard to ingrain this in our business operations. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the midst of COVID-19 health crisis, but as early as now, we can seize the opportunity and recognize that caring for the environment, along with climate change adaptation, play a crucial role in emerging strong from this pandemic and helping the economy adapt to the new normal. Environment recovery means economic recovery. Being green, using green technology, green products, creating green jobs are all for sustainable development and economic growth, especially in the aftermath of the COVID-19 crisis. Many companies are transforming onto green path, one that demands judicious use of digital technology and embracing the benefits of circularity. In the past 8 months during this pandemic, digital technology and digital transformation assisted our business to cope with the social distancing measures, ensure business continuity, and delivery services. Daily tasks, meetings, and trainings including our external communications and advocacies, are conveniently conducted via online platform that eliminated the need to travel and additional expenses. Digital shopping platforms utilizing digital wallets for contactless payments are the demands of today. Enhanced online shopping or e-commerce through social media and even digital personal shopping assistants are available in our malls. QR codes are in place for contact tracing to lessen the use of paper and pen. Business as usual will never be the same. Adapting to the new normal is about invocation and transformation. Post-COVID-19, the human landscape will continue to be reliant on digitization, and these eco-friendly tools, products, and services will be the norm. The public, including the students, are being ushered into the digital age, and it's expected that companies are to evolve with technology and fast. Moving forward, let us be the stewards of the ecosystem as we accept that one cannot live without the other. Let us create mindset.
Oh, Mr. Hansa ka nagsasalita eh.
Let us create a mindset for quality of life that requires a healthy environment, one that is sustainable and good for business. Let us adhere to inclusive economic growth by providing stable employment opportunities and green jobs that alleviates poverty and inequality. Let us create a robust economy driven by entrepreneurship and continuous diversification via advancements in technological innovations. Let us build and foster our commitment to heed the government's call to support environment and climate change actions, regardless of our income and stature. All of us have a role to play and strength to share. May we learn from each other and help each one rise above these unprecedented times. We must bring about shared prosperity and drive sustainable economic growth and inclusive development that is viable for the future. This is to revitalize our economy for all of us, the Filipino people. Most of all, let us acknowledge our moral obligation to the next generation by improving resiliency and protecting the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans, for a very interesting and informative presentation on the SM initiatives on protecting the environment and disaster risk reduction, which can be a model for the business community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our third and final keynote speaker will talk about commitment to the community and to suppliers. As early as more than 20 years ago, our speaker was already recognized in a book as one of the world's top 50 CEOs, championing the triple bottom line. In the old days, they would call it financial, social, and environmental, or profit, people, and planet. His deep involvement in the youth development with Ayala young leaders, the social development projects of the Ayala Group foundations, that's Ayala Foundation, Globe Foundation, BPI Foundation, among others. The Children's Hour, the Habitat for Humanity are just some examples of his passion for social responsibility. I had the privilege of working in several Ayala subsidiaries in the past, and I can say that Ayala really treats its suppliers fairly, ethically, and with respect. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, please welcome the Chairman and CEO of Ayala Corporation, Jaime August ZOBEL, the Ayala. Jaime?
Yep. Thank you very much. Rex, thanks for the kind introduction, and thank you for your own leadership on governance principles through your own association and independent entities. You've contributed a lot, I guess, to governance-related issues. So thank you, Rex. To Chairman AQUINO, thank you for creating this framework, this new innovative and progressive framework with which corporations have to look at themselves. Thank you for your leadership on that front. Francis Lim, President of MAP, thank you for this invitation. It's always a pleasure to work with you, your team, and your group. Hans, thank you also for your leadership. I think, I don't know if everybody knows this, but Hans is providing leadership on climate and sustainability issues, not only in the Philippines, but also globally. Hans has been recognized as a UN leader and has taken issues of climate change well beyond our shores. So Hans, thank you also for your kind steps. To many other friends who are out there, Ed and Coco from the Makati Business Club, Bong from the BAP, George, Baby, Jimmy, Boots, Daniela Chica of SAPI, a lot of other friends out there. Thank you for this invitation. I think in many ways, if there's any year that's, I guess, a challenge for all of us to think about what shared prosperity means, or rather what shared adversity demands of us, I can think of no other year than 2020 epitomizing what we've all been through. I cannot think of any other year or event in recent history, not even those events that included world wars, that resulted in all nations, all cities, all families, without discrimination, being negatively affected in such a fundamental and sweeping way. This COVID-19 crisis has and continues to result in a massive reshaping of the economic and social environment globally. And just when we thought that we'd flatten the curve and getting a handle, I guess, on the health-related issues, enough to reopen the economy and prudently live with the virus through to the end of 2020, we get hit again by Quinta, Raleigh, Sioni, blustering their way, I guess, into our countries and already affecting vulnerable parts of our society and our greater country. And so you get results in packed evacuation centers, and within those centers, you know, how does one observe the protocol of mask wearing, of hand hygiene, physical distancing? How do LGUs and the private sector distribute ayuda, given the twin mobility constraints of physical distancing and impassable roads? And how do we all collectively not halt our faltering steps towards recovery, everything else that we're doing within the constraints that we find ourselves in? Maybe it's hard to take a problem of the magnitude of COVID-19 for all of us to really understand that in many ways, when you get a problem of this magnitude, really supporting each other becomes, you know, the prime consideration. And as institutions, we're forced to rebuild together. And I think this first point that I wanted to make, that when you get overarching problems of this kind, it really takes all of us to come again together rather than act unilaterally to be able to solve them. In a way, let me just take a step back, just reflecting, I guess, on our fundamental economic frameworks. Our capitalist ecosystem, in many ways, a system that I believe in, has brought millions out of poverty and improved the lives of many millions more. And to a certain extent, free market competition to deliver goods and services has also benefited the consumer with innovative solutions and a plethora of choices that make affordable products and services through the cost efficiencies it brings along. But our capitalist ecosystem can also be fragile, favoring some segments much more than others. And it is increasingly clear to me that all of us who thrive on the successes of capitalism need to have a new sense of responsibility, a new sense of empathy to counteract the forces of inequity that the system also creates. So now more than ever, I think we have to find ways to expand our traditional definition of who we are responsible for and who we are accountable to, well beyond our shareholders and other providers of capital, and certainly well beyond the sole pursuit of profit. I think the statements being made by Chairman Aquino are very much aligned to that. This new form of capitalism is something we believe in, and clearly what Hans is also doing with the SM Group is very much aligned with a strong focus on climate. But I know full well from my dealings with Hans that he ascribes as well to this broader sense of responsibility that our capitalist system has. Maybe expanding on this a little bit, when the pandemic hit, and to use a couple of examples, just like Hans did also on the SM Group, the Ayala Group looked at 3 concentric rings of responsibility as part of our redefining, I guess, our courses of action. We had no playbook. Things were difficult. We all got hit at the same time, and we said, how do we adjust, I guess, to this new environment that we're in? And so we divided up into these three circles, and you'll see them on the screen. Our first circle of priority within the Ayala Group was to protect our employees. We figured there's nothing that you can do if that community doesn't feel safe, doesn't feel healthy, and doesn't feel financially stable. So we wanted to make sure that they felt financially secure and physically healthy. We also wanted to help ensure their peace of mind in any way possible, because it's hard to get anything done if the community you're relying on feel insecure for whatever reason. So we immediately back then released an emergency response package that covered wage continuance, leave conversions, and loan deferments to our direct employees. We also built dedicated medical facilities. We were concerned that with all the medical facilities in the country being taken up, we wanted to create our own dedicated facilities, first and foremost for our employees and their families, again, to make sure that they felt safe, but also beyond that, to the environment and to people at large. And that we could seek testing, treatment, and quarantine support, within, I guess, our group environment. So we provided stipends to partners also who were on daily wage, no work, no pay arrangements, including about 70,000 construction workers and some employees of our agency providers like security guards, maintenance, and housekeeping staff to help them ride out the period of work stoppage. The second ring, so that was the first ring. The second ring of responsibility we looked at was towards our partners who provide our goods and services and who interlink with the Ayala Group in one way or another and are part of our economic system. We needed to ensure that our broad economic ecosystem stayed in place as we collectively tried to recover. And when you have an ecosystem in the capitalist system that is integrated, as it is these days, between companies, large companies feeding off small companies feeding off large, that whole ecosystem has to also come up with you. You can't have one loose part and the other one succeeding. And so in that second set of responsibilities, we tried to work as closely as we can in helping, I guess, that ecosystem. So we gave many of our mall tenants a reprieve on rent. BPI, I know Bong is here as well, Globe, Manila Water, deferred payment deadlines and gave breaks on fees and interest charges. I know the whole Bankers Association has also been dedicated to supporting on that front. And finally, the third ring of responsibility was to support the community at large, especially those who are most economically vulnerable and least protected at a time like this, when all systems come down, all revenues come down, and there's not much to turn to. So together with many of you here, we had a number of projects together with Hans, and he mentioned it as well. We were about 270 firms. SM definitely was one of them. We worked hand in hand to start Project Ugnayan, an unprecedented private sector partnership. We realized that government would be unable to act swiftly at the time, as it needed time and approvals to realign its budget. And so we thought this initiative would bridge, I guess, the needs, I guess, of this community at a time when these most at-risk countrymen were facing, I guess, a great deal of hurt and a lack of access to products and services, given that their income had fallen to almost zero. All in all, we distributed emergency food packages, shopping vouchers, and medical assistance to about 2.8 million families, or over 14 million individuals. And the private sector also partnered with the government in many other ways to help the community at large. And by the way, we also worked with all the associations, MAP, MBC, Sharefill, and many others who came along. It's I guess the point I'm making here is that in a period of great stress, the traditional framework of the capitalist system, we've all learned to compete, we've all learned inherently to create a competitive advantage for ourselves, really was completely something that was not the right model. But instead, the issue of cooperation, of unity, of joint resources, what was needed in a time like this. And very much in keeping, I guess, with this covenant that MAP is putting forward about a new way of looking at our role in society. And, we moved on from Project Ugnayan. There were many other areas we partnered with the government in. We built biomolecular labs, converted arenas, donated lab equipment, food, PPEs. But I know many of you in this room did the same thing. We realized that if we did not help take care of the community at large, our interconnected businesses would eventually suffer or even fail in something of this magnitude. So the ecosystem would not thrive and remain intact if we failed to support it during this massive and extensive crisis. And I think this is very much in keeping with this covenant that MAP is putting forward. Our balance sheets were not structured for anything like this, and individually our impact would have been far less effective. But collectively, as a grouping of businesses acting in unison to address these pain points, we used our resources in much more imaginative ways and with critical mass to try to create an environment of trust that would allow us all to rebuild together. So the system came down together, and we felt it right to all come together and create a sense of unity in bringing that system back up together. I believe everyone rallied quickly around this idea of a collective purpose, and that we sensed that we had a broader responsibility to the community at large. And this actually created a very interesting dynamic in our country, a sense of common purpose, and a coming together of different groups united around a sense of common objectives in a time of need. And this new covenant, I guess, that's being put forward, I think is very much in the spirit of seeing ourselves in the private sector within this broader context, I guess, of society and coming together in significant new ways to address areas that traditionally we may not have seen as our responsibility. Please don't get me wrong, though. Beyond cooperating and by commitment to the community at large, I don't just mean that we should just always be involved in pure philanthropy. We cannot continue to give what we cease to have. And I believe that commitment to the community at large also means finding new ways to viably make our businesses more inclusive, new ways to produce, buy, and deliver goods and services, and new ways to interact with partners, communities, and the world around us. At the Ayala Group many years ago, we used to focus on the affluent end of the market in terms of our products and services. This has evolved significantly, and we now, in many ways, work to leave a legacy of an institution that addresses the needs of the vast majority of Filipinos rather than just the top triangle, I guess, of our society. It made sense to grow the institution by broadening and diversifying our market base. And it took some years to evolve effectively to this more inclusive philosophy that we have now, and one I think that your new mandate in MAP and these other associations is leaning towards. And it meant changing business models, harnessing in many ways new innovation and tackling problems, and building cooperation with partners and addressing new markets. The Ayala of today is very different to the one of 20 years ago. And I like to think that it is increasingly relevant to addressing and contributing to the development needs of the country as a whole, given this new philosophy we have, and very much in keeping with what Chairman AQUINO mentioned earlier about a greater responsibility, and also what all of you as associations seem to be advocating. We deliberately aligned Ayala's objectives to the National Development Agenda and began to broaden our definition of our own stakeholder community, well beyond our shareholders or current customers, in ways that we believed made us, I guess, in many ways more relevant to the needs of the country and the pain points we faced as a society. So in a way, it's all part of building trust in the communities that surround us. If we lose that trust, we're no longer seen as a contributor to the system, and both our institution and stockholders would be worse off for it. And I think Chairman AQUINO was making that clear in this new mandate, in this new framework that he was putting out. Finding a balance between our commitment to the providers of capital and the needs of our broader community may be tricky. But if we can align our institutions to the broader progressive development goals of a country, I believe we will have a sustainable business model that adds long-term value to anything we do. So today we're here to support a shared prosperity covenant. As individual firms, we have been engines of growth and contributors to this nation. I guess let me join the clamor to challenge ourselves. How can we, where can we level up to harness our purpose, our resources, and our actions so that the Philippine business groups, all of you that are here today, can collectively become a multiplier for growth and a force of multiplier for good. There are many ways we can do this, working in unison. And as I look at all the associations that I see here and their leadership teams, I know full well how many contributors to our society take place there. The employment that's generated, the capital that's generated, the new ideas, whether you're in export industries or in banking, manufacturing, or the like. This community here, this large community, is a major driver of helping our country come out, I guess, of this crisis. I think we should recognize that as such. And as long as we take a progressive outlook with which we view our roles in society, then I think there's a lot more that we can do. But thank you again for this opportunity. Francis, to you and to the other associations who are here. I hope there's some ideas here, but I'm completely aligned to your way of thinking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jaime. I like your statement about shared prosperity, at the same time shared adversity. Sharing the wealth is okay in the good times, but sharing the challenges in times of adversity is also just as important. And thank you for sharing with us the Ayala Group's response to the pandemic and your own programs in combating inequality in our society. And I'm glad for a very explicit statement of supporting the covenant, the commitments to all stakeholders of businesses. Thank you very much. Now, we go to the Q&A portion of our convocation. And as I mentioned earlier, for the Zoom participants, you may submit your questions addressed to a particular speaker in the chat box of the Q&A button. And for those on Facebook, please post your comments under the comment section. There had been questions already asked in the process of listening to our keynote speaker. And let me read the first questions to each of them. For Chair Emilio Aquino, the first question is, what for you is the greatest challenge in creating stakeholder value in our organization? And how can this be overcome?
Oh, well, it has always been easy to adhere to the traditional shareholders value model. First, it's quantified, and you know who gets to receive, and your fiduciary duty as a director or a corporate executive is limited to that goal, where the business of business is business. Okay. Now, I guess the greatest challenge is really overcoming that misconception that there are far less economic benefits if you consider the stakeholders theory. People have a hard time really understanding or believing that you can be good while at the same time making money. But our belief in the SEC is that it's not really a zero-sum game. We can still go for possible win-win through the stakeholders theory. Our corporate executives and the directors should go for probably sustainability and long-term growth instead of immediate financial gratification, like gunning solely for maximization of profits and lose the company, let's say, by throwing caution to the air in the name of shareholder value. And we've seen that, and I cited the case of Merrill Lynch, where they lost, I think, over 30,000 or about 35,000 employees because management chose to, go for risky subprime mortgage markets. Now, on the other hand, if you go for the stakeholders theory where you take care of your employees or your workforce, it's easy to attract talented employees because they want to be a part of a purpose-driven organization. And of course, an appreciative community will most definitely patronize your products. But you've noticed on the part of the SEC, we have some, we have to deal with in implementing the stakeholders theory. We are limited to at least as an initial step to disclosures and reporting, and at least giving the requiring companies to say the things that they pursue with economic, environment, social, and governance impacts. I think that's the challenge on the stakeholders theory.
Thank you, Chairman Emil. And the first question to Hans C. Hans, according to the 2020 Global Climate Risk Index, the Philippines ranked second as the most affected country in 2018, together with Japan, Germany, Madagascar, India, Sri Lanka, when Typhoon Mangkhut, or Ompong, called Ompong here, plowed through the northern part of the Philippines in 2018, affecting more than 250,000 people across the country. And just last weekend, we experienced Super Typhoon Rolly that devastated Catanduanes as a super typhoon. And of course, we still remember Yolanda. The question is, what are the recovery programs or initiatives that you can share with us supporting your disaster risk reduction and environmental advocacies? Hans?
Well, first and foremost, all these things really is just awareness. A lot of people would challenge the discussion about whether it's climate change or not. We just definitely have to make people aware that all of these are because of the human mankind not taking care of our environment. Well, so number two is a lot of, when you are aware, you start now doing a lot of things to try to prevent all these problems coming up. So that was why we went into a lot of disaster risk investments. Just like, as the typhoon gets stronger and stronger, what we have done was really, all our new projects, we have removed all the metal roof and all those things. So we started using concrete decks. But to enhance the concrete decks that we have done, we converted most of them into roof gardens. So these are the kind of things that, and with many, many other ideas that we have actually injected in this. Another area really is, we have actually been encouraging the local government to work together with private sector. As I would always say, no amount of work can be successful if we try to do things ourselves. Or I should say that if we expect government alone, I don't think they can be successful also. The success will only come when it's both government and private sector working together. So with that, I was able to launch and introduce what we call Adapt a City. And I believe that has worked, that has been working already very well. We were able through NRC, the National Resilience Council, it's a joint thing with Secretary Lorenzana. We were able to convince a number of local governments, especially the mayors, to really join with private sector to do something for disaster resiliency. Actually, I have many, many more over here. But one of the things that we really emphasize really is to take care of our tenants or the SMEs, because they are our supply chain. And it's really very important that everybody there, all of them survive, or else we would also be affected in terms of our business.
Thank you, Hans. And now to address this question to Jaime. This is a double-edged sword, this thing about stakeholders, privacy. How would you address your investors or even critics who may have reservations about your commitment to stakeholder capitalism? And how would you evaluate its impact on your stock price? That's a difficult question.
Well, it is and it isn't, Rex, no? And a little bit aligned with what Hans, said earlier. I think what this crisis made us in the Ayala Group realize is that over the years, and we've taken it for granted, the capitalist system we all live in and thrive in has become increasingly interconnected. All of us are linked to each other. Hans has a whole range of suppliers in his value chain, so do we. There are small and medium-sized companies that link up to bigger ones. We're all linked up. The banking industry supports us. And there's so many components of the business world where we all are intermeshed. When a problem hits, Rex, you can't just act alone, and particularly a problem of this magnitude. And so your future success will depend on everyone really being able to come out of this safely, well. And if you recognize that, and if the community recognizes that, then it's a whole different philosophy of engagement that begins to take place, rather than everyone saying, I'm just going to save myself. I'd like to take a moment, Rex, to say that during this crisis, everyone in this room, and I recognize all the associations here, and Bong and I talk a lot about this on the banking side, everyone came through in so many significant ways. And actually, I feel it is underappreciated, Rex. The business community came through hard and strong and committed during this. And it doesn't matter what industry you are in, you give employment, you help people out. And to a certain extent, everyone in this room really had to take a lot of pain to be able to support, I guess, their own communities in one way or another, and then come out of this as well as possible so we could rebuild again and pay our dues back to society through taxes and employment and the like. And so I think when you're looking at what your responsibilities are and how do you do best for your stockholders, by taking care of the community, by following sustainable development models, by in moments of need, lending a helping hand and working, you're helping preserve the same ecosystem that will give your stockholders a great return when things start to normalize. If you let that fall aside, then you're creating a lot of pain in the system that will have difficulty in coming back in. And I think your stockholders will be worse off for it. It creates trust in the system. It creates a sense of purpose, a commonality. And to a certain extent, in our particular case, the Ayala Group, and I think it's happened to everybody in this room, I mean, we have spent close to 11 billion pesos, one way or another, supporting outside our profits during this pandemic, the system around us. There's a question about, are you willing to reduce profits? I think all of us have reduced profits. All of us have put emphasis on keeping our employment teams together. All of us have contributed in one way or another to helping out. And I think that must be recognized, Rex, what this business community has done. Now, frankly, when I talk abroad at conferences, what I've seen here in the Philippines is an extraordinary example of bayanihan, of a sense of purpose, and I feel it should be recognized. And so that sense of sacrifice is there. And now all of us have to come and rebuild again. And hopefully, with the help of progressive individuals like our SEC chairman, then we start to create an environment again of rebuilding. But I think that sense of a broader community serves us well, Rex, at a time like this, and is certainly in the stockholder interest.
Thank you, Jaime. I share the same sentiment that the private sector has really responded very well with massive assistance given to the displaced, the disadvantaged during this pandemic, and yet it has not been recognized. And we have friends from the media who are attending this convocation, and I hope they can do something about this, because what is rewarded is repeated. So I guess we owe it to our business community to appreciate them, to recognize them and what they've done to help out during this crisis. There's a question from Potts Macaranas, a very, I guess, a philosophical question. And I can address this to all three speakers. According to Dr. Macarenas, geopolitical issues are outside the concerns of ESG, but are there ways where ideologically desperate societies and polities can converge for the global concerns? So I guess inequality is one of those global concerns, the pandemic also. Any of the three or the three of you can please respond to this question from Coach. Yes,
I think maybe Hans first.
No, I was going to say expound the question further because I just find it very general. I'm not really sure how to answer that actually.
Well, maybe one thing I can add at the conceptual level, Rex, is that increasingly there are problems that are overarching in nature. In other words, it takes a collective spirit to be able to address it. You take something like climate change. Our climates are changing. Hans is very dedicated to this field and been doing a lot about resiliency. But there are areas where we're getting hit, rising sea levels, increasing storms, earthquakes, preparing ourselves for it. You know, we can do certain things that we can act alone, but there are other areas where we have to be part of a global push to address these systems. And I think maybe what that question might be referring to is, for example, you take issues of moving towards carbon neutrality. You know, countries have to do this together. They can't do it, you know, saying, you know, one other party will take care of it, or we all have a role to play if we believe in addressing some of these pain points that we all feel. And so I think what he's saying is that there are areas where we can contribute at a global level by creating a unity of action. And our SEC chair, by taking this new step of redefining, I guess, our stakeholder commitments, is already taking a step that is important for all of us to say, you know, we all have to play a role in addressing these broader pain points. Inequality, Rex, is another one. And many of us have to come up with products and services that start to touch on many areas that we traditionally didn't. And I hope Bong doesn't mind my talking about this. At BPI, the two of us worked together to basically transform a whole portfolio in BPI to a microfinance one. BPI has not been known to be a leader in microfinance, but the two of us felt, together with support from our board, that we wanted to create and leave a legacy of a BPI that was relevant to addressing inequality on people's lack of access to financing at that level. It meant changing the whole organization, creating a new one, putting in technology. And so all of us have our share, Rex, in addressing these issues. No?
Yeah. Thank you. We have a question from our former Secretary of Finances, or Purisima. And his question is, where or how do you draw the line or the balance between these seemingly conflicting goals? Shareholders' value, employee welfare, community goals, environmental costs, and so on. Hans, would you like to have a shot at that question?
Yeah, as I was just about to also answer the first question, you know, it depends really a lot of how you look at it. A lot of people have different kinds of thoughts. A lot of people look at things differently. I can set as an example, as every time we try to develop an area, of course, there are certain things like trees that has to be cut and things moving forward. And people will say, I thought you're being environment friendly. Why are you cutting trees and things like that? And as everybody knew also, we've been accused, or I've been accused of cutting trees in Baguio. Well, my reply is always like this. Populations are growing. Economies are growing. I mean, people need jobs. So definitely we have to also push forward progress. So in that order, I think there are many ways to deal with this kind of problems. Of course, when you cut tree, it shouldn't be meaning that you just cut trees and set it aside and then moving forward with progress or expansion. What normally happens is there are ways to make up for the trees. I remember when I had to face all the so-called environmentalists in Baguio. They were saying you're cutting 100 trees. Every tree contributes about they absorb about 3,000 liters of water every year. So that might affect flooding and things like that. So my reply to them was, there's many ways to make up for it. Like we have the rainwater collection tank, which is about 200 times more than what a tree can do. And not only that, there are laws that says if you cut a tree, you have to plant another 20 seedlings to make up for what the tree can contribute to the air. But what we have done was even further than that. We would count the diameter of the tree and then replant saplings that will cover the diameter of the tree that was cut. So, but a lot of people would tend to also want to look otherwise. They would say, as long as you don't touch nothing in the environment, then that's okay. But as I said, again, going back to the question that you just mentioned, there's many interpretations. I would wish and always remind people to keep an open mind. As long as our conscience is clean, we want to be able to help people. You know, SM alone, moving forward, we have actually more than 130,000 employments. That also, I should say, addresses the inequality or unemployment to the country. So it really is a balancing act, and sadly have to say it's not for the faint heart. If people who are faint-hearted would face up to these kind of issues and then back off with it, I don't think it will. I mean, the whole picture will change differently. You'd see a lot of people hungry and those kind of. I mean, I don't want to paint a very sad scenario, but we really all have to keep an open mind about this.
Maybe
Thank you,
Rex. Sorry, Chairman. I think Chairman Aquino wanted to ask.
Yeah, you just want to add. You know, I think the question is, where do you draw the line? Because apparently this time you're not talking of just your shareholders. You're considering all the rest of the stakeholders. Of course, the shareholders included. I consider that as the challenge, in how to go about affecting the stakeholder theory, because before you are limited to your shareholders. This time around, you have more accountabilities. So we know for a fact that if you're accountable to so many stakeholders, you end up not being accountable to anyone, because exactly you need to really balance. But I'd like to believe that it's not preclusive in the sense you still go for profit maximization for your shareholder, but as much as possible, you have to still give due regard to the other stakeholders. In that sense, you try to hit a win-win. I know it's a bit difficult because somehow this involved some very expensive proposition. Like even in our case, we have some amounts. The 2 billion that we gave to the Philippine government for the anti-COVID fund was actually earmarked for some of our big ticket projects, and yet we have to give it up because we have to consider, of course, the fate of our community, our people who needs these anti-COVID measures to be undertaken by the national government. Because if we just intend to keep it for ourselves, then of course we could use that. Since we enjoy a fiscal autonomy, we can pursue our own SEC priorities. But then this really entails a lot of sacrifice and some weighing. I think the word balancing is very essential. But there are lots of theories actually involving the stakeholder theory. But bottom line is that our corporate executives, even government executives, must be looking at it more on the more long run strategic view, more than our immediate financial gratification. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
You're about to say something, Jaime.
Yeah, maybe to build on what Hans and the SEC chairman have said, Rex. I think Cesar Purissima's question is a great question. I believe this is more art than science. How we wish we had a handbook to tell us exactly what percentage to allocate. But Cesar's right, and this is a very, very tough job that management has and that boards have in addressing an issue of balance on this issue. As I've stated, I guess in my remarks and in my comments, I'm a great believer in this broader responsibility that we all have. But at the same time, people have put risk capital to play with your institution, and you should give a return on that capital. If that capital doesn't multiply and grow, then there is nothing for you to give and contribute to. So rest assured that I continue to believe in a strong component of discipline in using capital as wisely as possible. But I think if you have a long-term view of things, Rex, one is interested in building a broader trust. A pandemic, for example, is an extraordinary event. It's a black swan. It's something nobody ever expected and nobody has a playbook for. We believed within the Ayala group that we had to create a whole system of support and sacrifice returns at that point in time to be able to allow the ecosystem that supported us to come back alive and give capital back. And that philosophy is a philosophy. It's more art than it is science. It's a belief that you need that ecosystem to stay alive if you will be able to give returns back to stockholders as you move on. I like to think that that one can find a way to give a proper return to the capital that's been put in your care over time if you continue to build trust with the community. None of us can prevent bad things from happening, and when they happen, one just has to throw the traditional playbook away and say what is necessary to rebuild and to create trust in the system so that we can grow again together. And as I said earlier, I think what the private sector has done at this time as a whole, everybody in this room, has been quite extraordinary, and I feel that it should be appreciated more than it is. I think the environment in the Philippines of help, of commonality, of a spirit of working hand in hand, as Hans said, with government and helping in any way we can has been quite extraordinary. And to this day, there's still a lot of sacrifices being made by a lot of companies who are curtailing their profits for the sake of helping out a broader community spirit. And I think that's a great thing. But by addressing it and understanding that it's there, hopefully also on the government side, they'll understand that a lot of sacrifices have been made. And as we rebuild, then there should be a sense of helping the private sector rebuild again, because our balance sheets, none of us were made to take the kind of hits that we've hit. So as long as there's that commonality of spirit, as long as the government also understands that it's their job now, after a year of pain, that they can be also catalysts in helping us grow again, then you get the kind of catalytic spirit of growth again that I think is necessary to bring us out, and the psychological state of building again and progressive movement forward that I think we all need to ride this out.
Thank you, Jaime. And I agree with Chairman AQUINO that these two, the stakeholders and the shareholder interests, are not mutually exclusive. As a matter of fact, the challenge to most corporations, as we teach in ICD, in corporate governance, is finding the sustainability sweet spot, which is the intersection between stakeholder interest and shareholder interest, where profit meets the common good and so on and so forth. And I remember we have the PMAP people here represented by its president. In the old days, we used to talk about work-life balance as part of the human capital strategy that has now been updated to work-life harmony. Because with balance, it looks like it's one against the other. But harmony is harmonizing the interests of all the stakeholders. So thank you for those questions. We have time for one more question from the group. There is there's a question that was asked here, addressed to Ayala and to SM. question is, and it's an anonymous question, are you willing to reduce profits to achieve more inclusive growth? Hans, Jaime?
Well, I guess that's already being done. Okay, especially this with this pandemic that happened. As you know, we were among the first to announce to continue all the salaries even while we were all in the lockdown. So these are already all sacrificing profits. But why do we do that? As again, like Chairman Aquino and Jaime's AUGUSTO just mentioned, really we're all looking into long term. You know, investment is not only just for now or short-term basis. It is really long-term. We are in here. So as I have told our staff, I said, the reason we're doing this is because we want to make sure that everybody stays afloat. Just like the supply chain I mentioned, if I don't take care of them and then they go away, how would they be able to help me with my supply chain in the future? So we are willing to do that.
Jaime?
Yeah, in my case, I think I answered it earlier, Rex, but I'm completely aligned with Hans. Absolutely. I mean, if you're going to help out, and I think the amount of balance sheet pain that not only SM and ourselves have taken, but I would say everybody in this room, in one way or another, has suffered a great deal of pain and done their bit in many ways to preserve the ecosystem around them, their employees, the people that support them. I have 1,001 examples that I've seen during this crisis of everybody sacrificing a great deal. So I think that's not an issue. And I think the spirit, I guess, of this conference is one where there should be care to preserve the long-term nature of trust and commonality. And I think that's been very apparent in this whole crisis, Rex. It's frankly, I don't think it's an issue.
As a matter of fact, there's a growing movement around the world called impact investing. And you know about this, where there is this intentional creation of enduring social and economic value by impact investors. And we are seeing a growing number of companies who are doing well because they are doing good. And I think both Ayala and SM can be categorized in that situation where you are doing well because you are doing good, not the other way around. And I guess with that, we have other questions, but we've run out of time. And I would like to thank the keynote speakers for an incredible morning. Heavyweight speakers, profound statements, and inspiring words. And so thank you, Chairman Emil, Hans, and Jaime, for sharing your time and expertise with us today. We now would like to call on the chairman of this Shared Prosperity Committee of the Management Association of the Philippines, former MAP President Popoy Del Rosario. Popoy?
Good morning, friends and associates. As we all know, U.S. election results will bring in a new president. And as a vaccine for COVID is about to be discovered, and as we participating business organizations sign a covenant for shared prosperity today, we see and feel a lot of enthusiasm and positivity in the market environment. It is definitely a time to heed the call to help our less fortunate and marginalized fellow Filipinos. I'm happy as chair of MAP's Shared Prosperity Committee that we are all answering the call to give back and help out. In fact, we are now in the process, I'm happy to say, of participating in a hunger project with the Philippine Army, together with the Philippine Business for Education, PBSP, Ateneo, LaSalle, Caritas, MBC, MAP, ISA, and ICD. The objective of which is basically to feed and bring food to the hungry. So today, I would like to thank you, everyone, for signing this covenant and attending this convocation.
And to our participants, guest speakers, and the audience, thank you for your participation today. Stay safe and healthy. The convocation is adjourned. Good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Chairman Aquino. Thank you. And thanks,
Yeah.
Hans.
Thank you
It's a
too.
pleasure.
And in,
Thank you.
in behalf of the Philippine government, we thank you for all your initiatives from the private sector. I just want to point that out. We don't want to appear that we don't appreciate your efforts. Salamat po.
Thank you. We appreciate yours also, Chairman. Thank you.
Yes po.
Thanks,
Okay.
good talk. Jaime, good talk. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone. Have a nice day.
Thank you.